how a simple farm boy, armed with determination and an unyielding love for machines, transformed into the legendary Henry Ford. So, buckle up, because we're about to roll back the wheels of time to the year 1879. A 16-year-old boy leaving the rustic charm of his father's farm, headed for the bustling city of Detroit. Back then, the only speed demons were trains and horse carriages, and the idea of automobiles was reserved for the elite and their fancy racing machines. Little did anyone know that farm boy would turn the automobile industry upside down. Born on July 30th, 1863, in Dearborn, Michigan, Henry Ford was destined to take over the family farm. But hold on, he was cut from a different cloth. Unlike his father's love for farming, young Henry was drawn to the mesmerizing world of machines. And so, the adventure begins. Skipping school like a rebel, Henry's formal education barely made it past the 8th grade. But guess what? He was a self-made scholar, devouring everything about mechanics. At 12, his father handed him a pocket watch, and in no time, Henry became the neighborhood's go-to watch repairman. The guy was practically a time wizard. At 13, during a school trip to Detroit, Henry stumbled upon a steam engine, and that was it. His love affair with mechanics blossomed into an obsession. By 15, he crafted his first steam engine. But life threw a curveball. His beloved mother, Mary Ford, passed away. Devastated, Henry couldn't stand the memories on the farm, so he packed his bags at 16, defying his father's wishes, and set off for a new chapter in Detroit. Detroit, a city hungry for young engineers, became Henry's playground. Landing a job at Michigan Car Company Works, he got a taste of the industrial frenzy fueled by steam engines. But alas, he got the boot after just 6 days. Undeterred, he found himself as an apprentice at James Flower and Brothers Machine Shop, scraping by on $2.60 a week. Desperate times, desperate measures, right? At 19, he decided to return home to Michigan. Still despising farming, he did the bare minimum but spent most of his time tinkering with machines on the farm. Lucky for him, his father had invested in a portable steam engine, and guess who became the go-to steam engine maestro in the neighborhood? Yep, our man, Henry Ford. Word spread like wildfire, reaching the ears of the Westinghouse Engine Company of Schenectady, New York. Impressed, they hired Henry to travel across southern Michigan, setting up and servicing their steam tractor engines. The farm boy had officially become the troubleshooter of the mechanical world. Fast forward 35 years from his arrival in Detroit, and what do we have? Henry Ford, the man behind half of all cars on Earth, a titan in the automobile industry, and one of the wealthiest men in American history. Back in 1885, our hero, Henry Ford, met the love of his life, Clara Jane Bryant, at a New Year's Eve party. Engaged the following year, Henry's father bestowed upon him a generous wedding gift, 40 acres of land. Now, most folks would have plowed away, turning it into farmland, but not our Henry. He had grander plans brewing in his innovative mind. Fast forward to 1891. Henry and Clara set up shop in a small Detroit apartment. It was around this time that Henry stumbled upon a British magazine that introduced him to the game changer, the gas engine. Produced by a German engineer named Nicholas Otto, this little marvel was not your run-of-the-mill contraption. It was efficient, it was fast, and it didn't waste time with a 30-minute startup routine. Europe was buzzing about it, but in America, it was still a hidden gem. In 1893, with his newfound knowledge and skills, Henry and Clara welcomed their first child, Edsel Bryant Ford. Just 3 months post-baby bliss, Henry snagged a promotion to chief engineer, raking in a cool $100 a week. That same year, he achieved a milestone, creating his first working gas engine, the first step toward realizing his dream of a horseless carriage. Fast forward to June 4th, 1896, 1:30 a.m., the birth of the quadricycle. A quirky contraption powered by a gasoline engine, essentially two bicycles stitched together. It had its quirks: no reverse gear, no forward gear, and a knack for overheating. But hey, it was a start. Henry sold it for $200, and the cash became seed money for his next big venture. Now, after the Detroit Automobile Company fiasco, Henry found himself in a tricky spot. Despite rubbing shoulders with some big names in the city, not many were willing to throw their weight behind his ideas. But fear not, folks, because Henry wasn't one to back down. In a surprising turn of events, a year later, Henry's newly designed racing car swooped in and defeated the vehicles of some heavy hitters like Cleveland automaker Alexander Winton and the nation's top racing driver from Grosse Pointe. Imagine the buzz. Henry's 26-horsepower marvel became the talk of the town, and guess what? Investors suddenly saw the green light. The result? The birth of the Ford Motor Company, with Henry at the helm as the chief engineer. But hold on, the ride wasn't all smooth for our man Henry. His position hung by a thread once again. Why? Because Henry, fueled by his love for racing cars, continued down that path, much to the dismay of his investors. They wanted him to switch gears and focus on creating passenger cars for the masses. Cue the entrance of another Henry, Henry Martin Leland. This new Henry stepped in to do the bidding of the investors, leading to a frustrated exit for our visionary, Henry Ford. In his autobiography, Henry Ford boldly declared, "I resigned, determined never again to put myself under orders." Ouch! Meanwhile, the company changed its name from Ford Motor Company to the Cadillac Motor Company under Leland's leadership. Undeterred, Henry Ford, along with former racing cyclist Tom Cooper, kept the dream alive. In 1902, they unleashed the Ford 999, an 80-horsepower beast driven by Barney Oldfield, a former bicycle racer turned automobile speedster. By 1904, Henry's new car shattered records, hitting a top speed of 91.4 miles per hour. With a string of victories, Henry cemented his reputation as the go-to guy for racing cars in America. He knew he had the Midas touch and that investors would be knocking on his door whenever he was ready for another venture. Enter Ford Motor Company, Part 3. Backed by 11 investors, including the coal dealer from Detroit, Alexander Young Malcolmson, Henry's third company came to life. Initially called Ford and Malcolmson Limited, it later got a makeover to become the iconic Ford Motor Company in 1903. Having faced failure in his first two attempts, Henry was determined not to miss the mark this time. He set his sights on creating an affordable vehicle for the common man, a bold move in an era where cars were seen as toys for the wealthy elite. Now picture this. After some trial and error, Henry finally struck gold with the Model A. But here's the kicker. For the next 5 years, it wasn't just about improving designs. It was about revolutionizing how cars were made. Henry, wiser from his previous business missteps, grasped the importance of a single manufacturer supplying most parts. So, he found a machine shop in Detroit to do just that. But the real game changer happened during a trip to Chicago. Henry witnessed the assembly line concept at a slaughterhouse, and a light bulb flickered on. He thought, what if I applied this to building cars? And so, in 1904, Henry raised the stakes, built his own factory, employed over 300 workers, and began experimenting with the assembly line. By 1906, the Model N's production utilized the assembly line, boosting output by 5 times and becoming the best-selling car in the U.S. Henry Ford envisioned automobiles not as luxury items but as a common man's ride. Enter the Model T, initially priced at $850, equivalent to around $21,000 today. Despite the price tag, it became an instant hit, with 15,000 orders pouring in days after its release, making the Ford Motor Company the top car company in America. Now, cue the spotlight on the assembly line. Realizing the need for a larger factory, Henry built a new plant in Highland Park, Michigan in 1910. By 1913, after several experiments, the assembly line was in full swing. This innovative approach brought work to the workers, reducing production time from 12 hours to a jaw-dropping 90 minutes. By 1914, Ford's production rate surpassed 300,000 vehicles, more than all other car manufacturers combined. The Model T's popularity skyrocketed, and half of all cars on Earth proudly bore the Ford insignia. Henry's genius didn't stop there. Every year, he increased production and decreased the price. In 1916, a Model T, once $850, now sold for less than $400. But Henry wasn't just a business mogul. He was a pioneer in employee relations. The assembly line, while efficient, left workers dissatisfied. To combat this, Henry doubled the workers' wage to $5 a day, a move that shocked many. Critics scoffed, but the strategy worked. Mechanics from all over flocked to Detroit in search of higher wages. Henry didn't stop there. He also implemented a change in shift hours, giving workers a much-needed hour off. This allowed Ford to hire a third shift, creating a 24-hour operation. Other companies had to follow suit to retain their workers. Henry's philosophy: we believe in making 25,000 men prosperous and contented. In 1919, Henry Ford had not only changed the face of the automobile industry, but the entire business and manufacturing world. His approach of making high-quality goods at the lowest cost possible while paying the highest wages possible had set a new standard. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more.